Alright, hello and welcome to another one of Guru Pathic's replay reviews. Today's we're going to be reviewing this mid Shadow Fiend. His name's Silent. He sent me a message on Reddit, and his message was... I guess I'd say I snowballed somewhat decently, but didn't farm as much as I could have, which is probably what led to the loss. Laning stage I missed a few kills, and I think I misplayed into an obvious power shot, which was my fault, but otherwise it went pretty well. So it looks like your game went pretty well in your lane, and you've kind of already considered that you've missed some kills. I don't know at what point you think you've missed some kills, but hopefully we'll talk about it as they happen. And you're a little concerned with your farm, so we'll see how it goes. I fast forwarded the replay because there's a lot of dead time at the beginning. One thing to think about at the start of a game, the reason there's a lot of dead time is this guy's AFK, and so there was a bunch of pauses and waiting and whatnot. So your opening item build, you're going Wraithband, which is a fine item build on Shadow Fiend. Most of the pros, they go Wraithband, 2 GG branches, and they get pooled as 2 sets of 2 tangos. And then they actually contest one of the runes for the mid hero. And some of the reason for that is that the 0-minute bounty rune gives you 100 experience. So that means you only need 2 creeps to hit level 2 creeps to die to hit level 2. And it's a pretty big advantage in the mid lane. And they also use that initial 100 gold that you get from the bounty rune to buy a salve, because it's not usually enough regen to have 2 tangos. But your build is okay. There's nothing wrong with it. I just would like to see you contesting the rune. As for lineups, it's kind of hard to judge how you're going to win this game. You've got 4 cores and a Spirit Breaker against 2 cores, a Warlock, and a Visage, and then whatever this guy picks. So we'll find out in a minute. You missed your block here in mid. So if you aren't going to go for the rune, the reason you want to block is you want the creeps to meet on your hill, sort of up here, rather than in the middle of the lane. And it's okay that they're in the middle of the lane right here. Just the advantage of having creeps sort of on your hill up here is that it's a vision advantage, as well as like a attack missing kind of advantage. Daytime makes it so, like, during the day you can stand on this ledge and see across, but at nighttime you can't. So we'll see. We'll see how the laning phase goes initially. You leveled up Presence of the Dark Lord, or Necromaster, excuse me, which is also okay at 1. Because you want to start getting your skulls going as soon as possible. And if you get the rune, you can kind of get away with leveling up Shadow Rays early. Your build also can be more bottle rush oriented, where you go like 2 GG branches and maybe like a whatever the +2 stat item is. I'm gonna look it up. Yeah. Click back. Free camera. It's... I hardly ever buy it. A circlet. And the reason for this circlet would be that it builds into a magic stick later. So that's like something to think about. And that's more like bottle rush. You basically end up saving like 250 gold and helps you finish your bottle earlier, which means that it's okay to kind of take Shadow Rays at 1 to get last hits, but I think this is okay with the Wraithband. I mean, you're defaulting to a... This lane's kind of just going to be about farming. Or at least that's what you're hoping for. If the Windrunner decides to play aggressively, you're going to wish you picked Razes. But your last sitting's doing okay. Windrunner's doing pretty well too, so... 2 creeps out of the first 4, which isn't bad. Windrunner's not going to apply a lot of pressure to you. So why did you do that? That was really weird. I don't know why you did that. So one thing you want to do in these one-on-one matchups is the first thing you want to do is you want to click on your opponent and see what items they have, because their items inform how you should play against them. Like a Windrunner with 4 salves. Let's say a Windrunner has 7 salves. I don't think you can afford 7 salves. 6 salves at the start of a game. You're going to play a little differently against a Windrunner who has 6 salves versus a Windrunner who has like a Null Tally and a Tango. Now most people do this like standard build because they see the pros do it and they don't think about it. But every once in a while you'll see someone do kind of an unstandard build and it'll actually change the way you play against them. Like, he doesn't have much regen, but he also probably has Windrun. Most Windrunners sometimes take Windrun in the mid lane. It just kind of depends. But what you're looking to do right now is you're looking to create trades when you look at his items, because his items is he has 1 set of Tangos and a Null. So whoever farms better is going to get their bottle first, and whoever gets their bottle first is likely going to win this lane, just because they can spam out with spells and that kind of thing. And so that's kind of your goal right now, is to get last hits against a hero that has higher base damage than you. The Windrunner's at 63, and you're up there because you've gotten 4 last hits. So you're about even at this point. But like this raise doesn't accomplish anything. Like, it accomplishes the fact that it does, 100 damage to Windrunner. It's 75 with magic reduction. But you want your spells, especially in the mid lane, to accomplish 2 things. So if you were getting a last hit with this raise, in addition to hitting the Windrunner, I think that's good. But just the way you used it, you just used it as a regen trade. Your positioning's kind of off too. Like, you took 3 right clicks there and you didn't respond. So when we're talking about positioning in the mid lane, right? Like, you want to consider your creep wave whenever you decide to play aggressive. Because what happens here when you walk up and you decide to play aggressively and you right click this hero, these creeps aggro to you, and so they're actually hitting you in addition to the Windrunner. Then Windrunner hits back and these creeps aggro to Windrunner. But because they're aggroing much later, and you took like 4 or 5 auto attacks from these in addition to the Windrunner ones, then what happens is you're concerned about getting this last hit, which is okay, but what's the creep wave going to do, right? You have to anticipate what the creep wave is going to look like rather than react to it, right? This creep is likely to die. This creep is likely to run to here. So the position to be in to last hit this creep is over here, right? Or back here. Something like this. Whereas you're running to the creep that's where it is rather than where it will be. And what that ends up costing you is 3 right clicks worth of damage on this one. Like, this Windrunner hits you 3 times. That's what I'm trying to say. And she might have been able to kill you there if she had like a good shackle shot into a power shot. Granted, she's level 2, so it's a little difficult. But like, now you have the high ground advantage. And so like, what's happening is these creeps can't see you up this hill because nobody's standing up this hill. So if I switch to her perspective, I'm going to go back. We're going to go to the fog. So since no one is standing on this hill, she actually can't see you on this hill. Which is why when you're playing aggressively, like let's switch the fog back. So whenever you're playing aggressively right here, like when you're right clicking her, these creeps don't actually aggro because they don't actually see you. So these are like basics of aggro mechanics, and the mid lane is very much so about abusing these aggro mechanics to your benefit. Because the real difference in mid lane skill in a lot of ways is how well you can manipulate those creeps. And so like here, it's cool for you to right click her and these creeps won't aggro. This is why this is the ideal positioning for creeps rather than here in the middle lane. Now in the other lanes it's more to like force the player to be in a bad position, but in the mid lane it's about vision, because you can get free right clicks without aggroing creeps off on this hero. So here you raise, you get 2 last hits for it, that's okay. Wild Spear Breaker charges through. That raise was okay. I mean, it got you a last hit. You probably didn't need to do it, but goes back for a Tango. and you almost get back for a creep. So like here, like this raise is okay, but she's wasted her attack, so you don't actually have to raise to get this creep. You can just hit this creep, right? And then hit this creep. So you could hit both of those creeps and not do anything. This creep is aggroed on you right now, so you're taking extra attacks from him. And the way you de-aggro creeps is just by attacking your own creep like you're going to deny it. It can even be like a full HP creep or any one of your heroes. And that's how you like get them to stop. But you're taking a little bit of extra damage from that. Here you're a little indecisive about going back to get a tango. See how you do like a stutter step? You try to deny this wave. One thing to think about with these creeps, these like creeps that have 2 last hits going up the hill, is you can actually get a free deny sometimes when you're playing in the mid lane if you just wait. So what you do is you do a... Sorry, I'm going to like fast forward to a better part. So like right here, it's actually really common what you'll see is that someone will start their attack like this, and then they'll stop their attack. So it looks, you're like giving a fake out, essentially. Like, oh, I'm going to hit this creep, and then this person winds up to hit it, and you stop your attack like at this point. And the way you do that is with the S key, unless you've remapped your hotkeys. And if you don't have stop bound, I would bind it, just because it's a really valuable skill, or a valuable tool that you can use. But you can actually like stop right here. The Windrunner hits it, and then you throw your auto attack immediately after you stop. And you're just anticipating that she's going to fall for the fake attack, and then you're actually going to get the deny. So that's like a little trick in the mid lane to get last hits. Here, do you see this stutter step? It ends up costing you a creep. Right? Like here, I would be totally okay with you raising to get this creep, but you don't get back in time. The AoE, like the range on your rank 3 Shadow raise, is much longer than your auto attack is. Your auto attack's 600, I think, with Shadow Fiend. Let's see, does it say? There you go. His attack range is 500, whereas Shadow Raise rank 3 is 700. And then it's got an AoE associated with the Shadow range as well. So it can hit units like 900 away. It's a pretty long raise. So don't be afraid to use a raise in that situation where it's like you're not going to get a last hit otherwise. She pulls the creep. I don't know if she did that intentionally, but that was like a good play by her. You take a right click worth of damage. You get power shotted. You miss a creep. Rune spawning. You're a pretty good last hitter, honestly. 10 and 4 is pretty good for your MMR. Windrunner's kind of playing aggressively on you. But last hit denies, it's like 10 each. So like you're both doing about evenly. You get your bottle, you send it out. This is like a reasonable time for a bottle. You missed a last hit there. You missed another last hit here. No, you got that one. That's good. So a lot of what the laning phase is early on is that both of you aren't playing very aggressive, and that's okay. Like one thing you'll see in like lower MMR games is that people don't fight for farm, they just farm, right? Like you don't have to assert any lane dominance. But like early on I was talking about like you weren't raising for reasons, and you've basically used 2 raises in 3 minutes. And like now when you get your bottle, your mana is full because you've only used 2 raises. Now granted, there haven't necessarily been a lot of great opportunities to use raises, but if you're about to finish your bottle, just throw them out kind of thing, Because what you're losing here is efficiency on your bottle, because you could have raised the wave more and then had more mana, so to speak. You probably could have killed her there. So the way you kill people as a Shadow Fiend in the mid lane is just like this. You get a 3/4 HP target, because you can't really kill someone from full health unless you hit all 3 raises, which is pretty hard to do. It can happen, but it's pretty rare. So the way you kill a target like this is you auto attack, then you medium raise, and then you auto attack again, and then you long raise. And you can hit both of the raises because your attack has a cooldown essentially, and during that cooldown you can cast spells or you can move, and you want to take advantage of that on Shadow Fiend, and you'll get a lot of kills that way, honestly. But that was an easy kill for you right there. Like, Windrunner has 300 HP, and your raises do 175. So it might have been close. She might have had like 1 hit left. But again, like, you're going to want a bottle for HP, and right now you're not getting any mana out of the bottle. Here, since you have a bottle, just push this wave as fast as you can, right? Like, just triple raise this down. Set up a long raise, walk up for a medium raise, walk up for a short range raise, get all the creeps, and then go take the rune that the Windrunner doesn't take. Right? Creep equilibrium is less important in the mid lane. It's important. But more creep management is what I call it, because you're mostly just pushing. Like, the reason you get a bottle is to go for runes. And right now, neither of you are going for runes. She's didn't even go bottle. So it kind of makes sense that she wouldn't. Here you get aggressive. And now you go for the rune? No. Alright, you're starting to raise. So when you raise, getting the direction you're facing right can actually be kind of tricky on Shadow Fiend. Here you took a deny instead of a last hit. So getting the direction right is kind of tricky. One thing you can do that Weehaw does is you can actually set a key that when you press this key and click a direction, your hero will just turn and face that direction, even if it's impossible to run that way. That's like an auto-executable file, or what do you call it? Console command that you kind of play with at the beginning of the game. And Weehaw actually like delayed the start of one of his pro games because it wasn't working and he was playing SF. So that's like the easiest way to aim your raises. The other way is to just kind of like click really close in front of your hero, or click on the creep that you're attacking and your hero will face that creep. So those are like the more common ways, but the easiest is just to set a key to do it. And that's what Weehaw does. But if you're having trouble aiming raises, go look up that command. I'll even find it for you after I do this replay.
Dire's bottom tower is under attack.
So here you go to take the rune. You have 700 gold right now, so I'd like to see you buy that. Get your boots, get whatever next item you're going to get. You pick up a haste rune, which is a good rune. And like here, you might have been able to kill her with the haste rune. You kind of have to outplay her to kill her with the haste rune there. But you got to hit 2 raises. It's the same thing. Like, for Shadow Fiend to get kills, you basically get someone down to 3/4 HP. And then you nail 2 raises on them. Courier's going out top. You buy your boots, so that's okay.
Dire's bottom tower is under
Your last hits are okay. But I guess what I'm feeling watching this video is that the laning stage is just really passive, and that kind of favors you as an SF. And I think this is something that's just kind of true in your bracket. If you can learn to play aggressively in your lanes, you can own these lanes, because farm is something that's kind of earned rather than something that's, you know, hey, I picked an AM safe lane, so please leave me alone while I last hit 60 creeps for 60 minutes, or for the first 10 minutes. Like, that's not really how Dota's played. And as you get better and better, what you'll start to see is people playing more and more aggressively. So here, this is good. You're pushing the wave, and you're going to grab a rune. So, bounty rune. So, one thing you want to keep in mind is whenever you take a rune and it's not the main rune, you want to inform your other lanes that the mid is missing and they have a real rune, right? So most of the time what you'll have is rune trades where like one mid goes top and one mid goes bottom, and you kind of want to announce to your team like, hey, Windrunner is missing. You can do that by alt clicking her picture, or you can do that by, you know, all voice chatting, or you could just type like Windrunner MIS kind of thing. And it's a little thing, but it actually can help out your team quite a bit. And like giving away what rune they have can also be informative. But what's kind of happening this game is you two are kind of doing your own thing mid. You're both 0-0 and you're just trading farm mostly. And all of these kills are happening in the other lanes. And the other team's kind of taking advantage of those kills. They're kind of winning in those kills, and your team's kind of losing, which means at some point you're going to need to rotate and do something to help those other lanes. But that could be a bit tricky. Like, Shadow Fiend's not really a great rotator. He can be. Like, you could have used the haste rune to rotate, but you didn't. Power shot. So one thing when you're playing against a Windrunner, this is like a very specific Windrunner thing, is you don't walk back in straight lines because you get hit by power shots like this. Like, if a Windrunner has mana to throw away, which sometimes they do, they just throw random power shots down. And so you actually just walk like down to the side a little bit, and you kind of like juke left and right. It's literally just a only versus Windrunner kind of thing. But your raises hit really hard right now. And so, like, what I would have liked to have seen you done there is go stack, which you might try to do. Alright, you tried. It's a good effort. That's a little bit easier if you use the Weehaw thing, the Weehaw command. But you can also stack. So this one's a little tricky to stack from this time. But one thing you can also do, like, I like the idea. You know that you should stack. This probably isn't a raise that's going to happen. The easier one to stack is this guy, if you're like not going to get there in time. You can walk here, and you can raise here. And you do it so your raise hits this camp at 55 seconds. This camp stacks when the auto attack lands at 55 seconds, whereas this camp stacks when the auto attack lands at 52 and a half. 53 it can stack, kind of thing. This one's kind of the same thing. You want to pull this at 52, 53. So this one basically gives you the most time. If you're like running out of time to stack, you can just stack this one. And on Dire's side, you can actually stack this camp in addition to this camp, but it's a little tricky because you have to hit this at 53, walk this way, turn this direction, raise at 55, and then walk down. That takes a little bit of practice. But it's a good thought. You miss one creep for it. Usually the stack is like pays for that one creep. Here you walk up and hit Windrunner. Your short raised missed this creep. That's okay though. You hit the two creeps you were going for. And you've purchased gloves, maybe treads. Like, part of playing Shadow Fiend is about abusing bottles and about abusing regen from the runes, essentially, and the fact that your raises only cost 75 mana, which is essentially one bottle charge. So one thing you could do is you could actually send your bottle back. So Windrunner just killed Sniper. This is like a strategical thing, but when the mid laner is gone, right? And in this case, Windrunner is ganking top.
Bottom tower is under attack.
Right? Back to the jungle, which is a perfectly okay. You can even go for this hop rune and try to steal the top rune. This is an opportunity for you to get chip damage on the tier 1. Because one of the ways you can win mid is you could just push the tier 1 down. Right? Like this is 200 gold for everyone on your team, as well as probably the best tower in the game in terms of map vision. The tier 1 mid. It's probably the most important. You know, it gives access to Roche, it protects the jungle on both sides, like the Dire Tower protects this jungle entrance, sort of. The Radiant one does protect this jungle entrance. So if you see a mid hero somewhere else, like top, for example, think like how you can punish those movements, rather than just kind of like moving to move. Maybe you're looking to try and kill, and you kind of took the wrong path here, but you could have done 400 or 500 damage to that tower. Like, one thing that I see a lot... Here you raise in the wrong order. Like, it's okay that you're rotating to try and get this kill, but I just don't think you're going to get it, honestly. So I think like chasing a Windrunner is kind of a bad decision, and hitting this tower would be a better decision. Mostly because tower pushes don't actually happen in one push. They usually happen in pushes of like 3 or 4 kind of thing. And so what I mean by that is you could take your opportunity to get your first push on this tower now and deal 400 or 500 damage to it. And then your second push does another 400 or 500. And then your third push finally kills it. So I think I'd rather see you just push that tower, raise out this wave under here. Like, hit this tower 5-6 times. You even have a siege wagon, right? Raise these creeps, and then walk to take this rune from Windrunner. Like, I think that's the better play here, rather than taking kind of a suboptimal chasing path for Windrunner. Right? The path that would have been better, like, you have to, instead of chasing to where a hero is, you gotta chase to where they will be, right? It's gonna take you 3 or 4 seconds to walk to here, and by that time, Windrunner's gonna be down here. So if you're anticipating which way the Windrunner is gonna run, because she's right here, there's only one way to run. She can either run through the team, or she can run through the river. And so it kind of makes sense that she would take this path right here. Therefore, you can just kind of walk this way. It's a small thing. You end up getting a kill. And again, this is like how to get kills with Shadow Fiend. So, what do? You walk up and you auto-attack first. So you don't start with a raise. You auto-attack this Windrunner. Then you medium raise because she's in range for the medium raise and likely to run away. And then you long raise after you auto attack again. And it would have for sure killed this Windrunner even if you just got 1 auto attack off. But you could have gotten 2. And then the Tiny ends up dying because your Viper rotated as well. Here you see another hero. Probably not worth chasing. And you walk back and you grab the rune. So, like, your movements were okay there, but they could have been a lot more efficient. You could have gotten 4 more creeps, more tower damage, and probably gotten those kills anyway. It's a Vine Raise. So here, if you wanted to stack camps, you would need to go stack right now. It's basically like in the mid lane, if you're a Dire Shadow Fiend, you have to go try to stack at like 38 seconds. Takes you a little bit longer to get there. If you're a Radiant Shadow Fiend, the reason why Radiant's so good is that you can actually stack like this camp right here at, if you're here, at 42 seconds. So it just gives you 4 extra seconds to be in the lane, which is a big deal to get stacks off. Whereas this one you have to run to, and it's a little bit further away. So you have to think, like, Shadow Fiend's all about all of these kind of decision points. And decision points happen at basically 38 seconds, every single minute on the hero. You need to decide, am I going to push the tower? Am I going to push the next creep wave? Am I going to go stack? Am I going to raise the next creep wave to go get a rune? Like, what am I doing? Those are kind of your options, right? Push, attack the hero, go stack, go get the rune. Those are your 4 options on Shadow Fiend, and every single minute you got to decide what the best decision is. Now, granted, going to get the rune and stacking are kind of the same reason if you think about it, because you go stack on odd minutes and then you go get the rune on even minutes. So that's really kind of the same decision. And so like here, you're not worried about picking up a rune, you're worried about stacking. But I think pushing here is perfectly fine. Again, right? You want to get 2 to 3 pushes in to get a tower down. It's mostly what it takes, right? Like this push probably did like 300 or 400 points of damage.
Bottom tower is under attack.
Let's look at this tower. Sorry, somebody messaged me. So this tower was at 1059, and your push takes it down to 726. So you did like 300 tower damage in that one push, which is good. That's really good. So here you've got your power treads up, which is good. He comes and hits you. Okay, this is like a kind of basic thing when it comes to playing against heroes with nuke. But hold on one second. Sorry about that. So when you're playing against heroes with nukes, right? Early on I talked about how you wanted to use your nukes for kind of 2 purposes, and one is to do damage to the hero as well as get farm. So when you're playing against a hero with a nuke like a Windrunner, you want to position yourself such that if they use their nuke to get farm, they can't hit you, right? And so there's kind of like this, you literally go back and forth all the time in your lane because you're moving to positions that Windrunner can't power shot you, and then she's moving to a position where she can power shot you and get a creep. So like here, right? I'd like to see you standing over here, right? Windrunner's in position right here to power shot and power shot this direction, right? As well as get this creep. Like the closest she could get is probably here, so she can't actually hit you where you're standing. So this is good positioning, right? The creep dies. She doesn't power shot it. You come up and last hit this one. She kind of punishes you and hits you for that because it was a bit out of position. But here, you want to be standing here, right? Because Windrunner is going to power shot this direction. She won't be able to hit here. And then what will happen is Windrunner will move to here, and in that time, you're moving back over to here, and then your last hitting creeps. You're just constantly in a position where she can't power shot you and hit creeps. She goes for the kill. And then you die to the power shot. Okay, so that's like a typical Windrunner thing. And this is like when you play in SF. SF is a hero that is pretty fragile and pretty weak to ganks. So one thing about this gank, you're on int treads. And that's good for mana efficiency, but bad when you're getting hit. So switch to strength treads, first off. The next thing is that you probably could have just fought this Windrunner. Like, these raises really hurt, and Windrunner doesn't actually have that big of an HP pool, 815. So if we're to count the damage, right, from raises do 325 damage. Heroes have 25% magic resistance naturally, right? Which means that she's going to take roughly 240 damage per nuke. And so if you're able to land all 3 raises on her, she's 1 right click from dying because she has 815 HP. Now, granted, you use a raise here to farm, which is okay. It means it's not really an option, so maybe retreating is the option. She misses the shackle shot here, which is good. But again here, switch to strength, and then when she goes to power shot, that's what you're waiting for. So like a lot of times, instead of kind of clicking furiously, to run away, which you're kind of panicking because she's going, right? Like all your clicks are like run, 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 run. What you do is you click once to run, and you click kind of far away. So if I were to look on the camera, click like here to run away. So just like shift your camera up, click here, and then go back. And what you're doing is you're going back and you're watching the Windrunner. And then whenever she starts to channel, you just click to the right. So like what I'd like to see your camera movement look like is here. She goes on you, click here, come back, watch Windrunner, and then boom, click. And you dodge the power shot that way. Do you see where my mouse is right now? That's like how you dodge spells like that. Is your hero, you trust them to do what they're supposed to do, which is just walk in a straight line. And then you position your camera accordingly to kind of dodge the spell, or give you the most time to dodge the spell. So we'll take a look at the state of the game, sort of right here when you respawn, because I'm assuming you're just going to TP back mid. And then we'll talk about like what you should be thinking going into the mid game. Alright, so 10 minutes in, you've just died, which is kind of a bummer. But again, state of the game, right? Lots of fighting has been going on in this game. There's a total of 16 kills. God, my math is bad. 16 kills right now, and you and Windrunner have been a part of, well, 2 of them, because you did help with this one over here. So 2 of them you've been a part of, and that's not necessarily your fault. Your job as the mid laner is to do mid lane things. Your farm is really good, like better than everyone else in this bracket probably, and you're probably one of the better last hitters I've seen in this bracket. So that's good. That's not something I don't think, it's something you could work on, but it's probably not the most pressing skill to your getting better. But what you need to be thinking is like, who do I want to target? Who do I want to go after? Who am I worried about snowballing? Like, what's going to happen this game? Think about it in terms of the future, and that can inform kind of what items you need to build. So they have a Tiny, who's doing pretty okay, 3 and 2. They have a Huskar, doing pretty okay. Windrunner, who's also doing okay, probably the best on their team. Visage doing okay, Warlock doing okay. So all their team is basically doing okay. No one's doing exceptionally to the point where I would itemize against them. Your team, on the other hand, has a Viper, who's doing pretty poorly, Sniper, who's doing really poorly, and a Spirit Breaker who's doing really well. And so what you can think is, if the Spirit Breaker is doing really well, then I likely want to fight with him. Can I itemize in such a way that Spirit Breaker and I can just go fight people together? It's kind of what you're wondering. And Shadow Fiend doesn't really have a good item to do that. If you were a Quap, for example, Quap can go fight with Spirit Breaker a lot early and often. So maybe that's something to think about and when you're like picking your hero. But I'd think like, hey, I want to hang out with this Spirit Breaker kind of thing on my team. The only item I could think of that's like good with Spirit Breaker is maybe a Shadow Blade. But like the way you win this game, and the way you win a lot of games at 2K, is you're not worried so much about team composition. You're just trying to get big enough that you become essentially like a 1v4 hero or a 1v5 hero, which is definitely something you can do in this bracket. So like team fight composition doesn't matter as much, because if you're just always there and you're just really strong, then that's like an easy way to win. So here you play really aggressively. That raise missed, but it's okay. I like the aggression. Like this is what laning phase should be, is more aggressive play. You might have been able to kill her with that raise. I think her HP. Oh, that raise did hit. That raise's range is long. Long. Oh, she kind of like walked back into it. That's why. But your game's going okay right now. You haven't stacked any as a Shadow Fiend in the first 10 minutes, which is like, yeah, your farm can be better. But it's like I said, the biggest thing I want you to take from the first 10 minutes is at 38 seconds on the dot when you play Shadow Fiend, you're at a decision point. And the 3 things you're thinking about is rune/stack, right? Push the wave or attack the hero. right? Those are like the three big things. And then pick one, right? Rather than kind of just sit in lane waiting for the creeps. Here you're like looking at buying BKB. Maybe you're worried about like dodging shackles, which is a concern. But BKB is kind of an item that you buy to end the game, because if you look at the stats on it, it's actually really bad. 10 strengths and 24 damage for 4k gold is really bad. As opposed to, like, if we compare it to a Sange and Yasha, for example. Like, Sange and Yasha gives way more other stats as well.
Radiant's top tower is under attack.
So here you push the wave, which is good. And then you go to like stack or farm the jungle. I guess it's just farm the jungle. So one thing about farming the jungle like this is it's fine. It's what makes Shadow Fiend so strong. But you also want to pick when you want to farm the jungle well, right? And what I mean by that is you want to push the wave into the tower, which is kind of what you did. But you didn't do it very quickly because you didn't do raises, and so what's going to end up happening is Windrunner is going to essentially get a free wave at the mid tower, right? It's this wave. Like what I'd rather see you do is double raise at this point because it clears this wave as fast as possible, and then Windrunner is forced to last hit 4 creeps under the tower by yourself, and then this is when you go jungle. Rather than going and jungling now, right? You're getting 2 jungle creeps, which give 27 gold, when you could be getting the mid creeps, which give 43 gold, right? Like you missed 2 creeps here. That would have been 43 gold and more experience. Like the point of Shadow Fiend is you take advantage of the lane farm in addition to the jungle. Don't trade the lane farm for the jungle farm, because the jungle farm is much worse. And like in terms of opening item builds, I understand you're worried about dying, maybe to Windrunner or Tiny's like magic damage or that kind of thing, but BKB is not the first item to go, just because it is a buy this item, win the game kind of item, rather than a or buy this item because you need to have it to fight kind of item, rather than a farming item. Like items I consider on Shadow Fiend, there's a lot of ways to build Shadow Fiend, and that's part of like what's fun about him. Euls is a pretty good option if you want to farm a lot, farm the jungle, and you're good with raises. Like if you want to work on raises, build Euls, because you'll have infinite mana basically, and you can just run around and raise everything. It's actually really fun. One of my favorite builds, and it's also got some cool synergy with your ultimate and is nice for disjoining things. So that's one option. The other option is to go Shadowblade, which gives you like solo pick off potential as well as some farming and dodging wards. So that's pretty good. Usually if I go Shadowblade, because it's a little bit more mana intensive, I like finishing an Aquila, just because it kind of offsets the mana cost from the Shadowblade in addition to your bottle. Other items to consider are like Sange and Yasha. Really good item. You can go the Sange first if you're worried about dying, because it gives you HP, and then finish the Yasha later, because Shadow Fiend really doesn't need damage. Like he hits really hard early just because of the way Necromastery works. So that's like one way you can build if you're worried about dying. You can also go Helm, which gives you survivability in the form of armor as well as lifesteal. That's more of a like you want to farm the Ancients kind of build. And then you can go like weird stuff that's a little bit more unconventional, like Mask of Madness, run around super fast, kill things, or like early crit or something. But those are a little bit more non-traditional. But I would recommend those 4 items to go early on rather than BKB. Because like what you're worried about dying to magic damage wise on their team is the Huskar, who's kind of a worry, and the Tiny. But in the early game, the way you dodge that is just by building HP rather than building magic immunity. So here, big fights happening top. Your camera's moved off the mid lane, which is this is the first time it's done it. And what you'll see when you watch pro games is that the camera doesn't actually move that much until they get a TP, because they're relying on voice communication instead. But this is good, right? 38 seconds, what do? Right? Mid-hero is missing, push the tower.
Radiant structures are
Perfectly good decision. You could have gone to push if you wanted to. Here you're TPing in. You get a nice kill on Warlock, so probably worth it. Viper runs in and dies. You run away. You may have been able to kill that Huskar, although Huskar may have killed you. Yeah, you look kind of dead. See if you get away from this one.
Dire's top tower.
No, there's a blink on Windrunner. Good understanding of the ult, though. How it does damage reduction. Might save you. Although Windrunner has a blink. Yeah, so. So, like, this TP was okay. So, I'd much rather see you just push this tower down.
Middle tower is under
Like, I think pushing this tower is a higher priority than TPing. But it is good, in the sense that you're looking to TP counter gank. Like, you see Viper, like, what you saw before this TP happened is you saw Viper strike this guy. And there's golems on him. This wave is pushing into your tower. And you've got a retreating sniper on low HP, right? This is the lane that's been going really poorly, right? Your sniper has died 5 times. Your shadow and your Viper has died once, so there's 6 deaths among their 3 kills. So this lane's going really poorly, and you're likely to run into some really farmed heroes over here, right? So when you're TPing in, right, you want to prioritize what's good for you. And getting this kill, like, this kill would have happened regardless if you TP'd it or not, because Sniper is just going to assassinate him. So while the thought was good, like, your TP actually accomplished nothing. And then here, your Viper senses that you're in here, and he, like, tries to go for this kill on the Visage. Not the Visage is on his team. Yeah, I guess he's going try to go on the kill for the Visage because he's like pinging him right here. And you kind of misunderstood it and didn't do anything. So like here, you have a choice, right? Which is you're kind of getting sandwiched by a bunch of different things. You TP'd into a really difficult situation and like there's no way for you to get away here. Like best way is probably to fight your way out, like walk this direction. What I mean by this direction is like on the minimap, just walk through back through the top lane. But your TP just didn't accomplish much. Shadow Fiend's not really a great counter ganking TP hero. It's not really what he's good at. What Shadow Fiend's good at is pushing and farming and doing those kinds of things. And so if you were a Queen of Pain there, like I think that's completely fine to do that. But as a Shadow Fiend, like don't TP unless you can get a kill that you wouldn't have gotten otherwise. Because now you're just spending time dead rather than pushing, which could have been a lot more beneficial. Like this mid tower could have died in this whole time. And then basically what you do is you're not getting kills, you're not slowing them down, but you're speeding your team up because you're giving your whole team 250 gold. Right? It's just having different targets in your mind. If you're a Pudge, right, you TP there every time. If you're a Queen, you TP there sometimes because Queen's kind of like a nice mix between like a Shadow Fiend and a Pudge. Like she's got kill potential, but she's also can push with her Scream. Whereas Shadow Fiend's on the very much the push and the farm end, which is push those towers, take them down, and then help your team when you like absolutely have to, rather than
Radiant's middle tower is under attack.
when you sort of should. So here you miss some raises. It's okay. I like that you only do 2 raises to clear that wave. That's the most efficient way, because you lose a little bit of HP tanking the creeps, and it's the most bottle efficient way. It's not the fastest. The fastest is always just to raise. But you get the most bottle efficiency using 2. You wasted a bottle charge there.
Dire's middle tower is under attack.
So again, here, like strategical decision. You're farming the jungle. Windrunner's pushing your tower mid,
Under attack.
right? Like don't trade lane creeps for jungle creeps. They make your stats look good. That's really what they do. Right? They inflate your last hits. Like, your last hits are probably insane this game. Right? It's more than everyone. But if you think about it, your last hits are probably 60 from lane and then we'll say 30 from the jungle. And jungle creeps get basically 60% gold. So your last hits are actually somewhere around 75, maybe 10 less. Which is still really high. Like, you're probably the highest net worth hero in the game. Alright, so you're behind this Windrunner. But that's because Windrunner's getting kills and you're not. Like, kills are a huge influence on gold per minute. So you've got to be really efficient with how you farm to keep up with someone who's getting kills. And like at this point, like an ideal Shadow Fiend game, you'd want to have double your CS at this point, like 150. It's like really hard to think that you could get that much CS in that many minutes. But what you're doing right now is instead of farming the lane in the jungle, you're trading it. And so that's like the biggest point I want to get across for you. Here you missed some raises. You were trying for a kill though, so that's okay.
Radiant's bottom tower is under attack.
But see how this was good? Like, you probably didn't do that intentionally. But, you know, you're playing against a Windrunner. Instead of walking straight back, you kind of move down. And you end up dodging a power shot because of it. Right? Like, move side to side versus a Windrunner.
Radiant's bottom tower is
Like,
under attack.
here, right? 40 seconds or whatever, we're a little late. Make your decision. You can just go straight for the rune, which is one thing that you do. But on a Shadow Fiend, you usually don't want to do that. You actually want to push the wave and then go for the rune. So you usually show up to the rune like 4 or 5 seconds late. You even took the rune before 16 minutes. That's funny, because the DD was there the whole time. You could have picked up an invis too.
Dire's top tower is under attack. Dire's top tower has fallen.
It's good. So you killed the mid-hero. They're pushing top, right? Which, you have two choices when they push your waves. You can either fight them or you split push. And like, split pushing is definitely the option for you right now.
Radiant's middle
You get a tower, which is good. That comes back to those early pushes on the tower, right? You got 2 or 3 early pushes, and so this tower was at 300 health and just died immediately. Which is what you're looking for, right? But you probably could have gotten that tower down at like 8 or 9 minutes. And then that opens up the map for you to farm. Huskar is diving you. Typical Huskar things. He's got a tiny there too. They get into range. Really nice ulti. Strength treads? You're gonna die. You might have lived if you TP'd there. Probably not. You probably also would have died if Tiny used his spells right. But still really good. One thing that's nice about Shadow Fiend's ulti, and this is kind of like a Huskar mechanic too. Huskar doesn't actually gain Berserker's Blood from burst damage. So if you hit him for like 900 magic damage and he's full HP, he'll take the full 900 magic damage. Doesn't actually get reduced. But if he's at 10% HP, which is like pretty much his maximum resistance, let's say he has 90% resistance, and then you hit him with a 900 damage spell, then it'll reduce most of it. You'll do 90 damage. So you can actually one-shot him with abilities like Requiem and like Techie's Mind that I think of. Because it really bothers me that you can't just pick a hero that's like immune to Techie's Minds. I wish that was possible, but it's not. Huskar dies to the green ones, which are magic damage. If you have enough of them.
Dire's
Missed the
middle
deny
tower
here,
has fallen.
which is okay. So when you're looking to deny a tower, but that's like good understanding by you, essentially the fact that you could kill that Huskar. So now you've got your BKB. It's okay this game. It's just, it doesn't help you farm faster. So when you're hitting a tower, something to think about with towers is towers have 20 armor, which is a lot of armor compared to everything else. The mid-tier 2s actually have 22. And then I think it's 20... No, it's 22 as well. So every tower has different stats. 1300 is the stats on the opening tower with 20 armor. And for towers to be deniable, they have to be under 10%. So for the first tier 1 towers, it's under 130 HP. and for the tier 2 towers it's under 160. But this 20 armor matters a lot for last hitting towers, because if you think about how much the damage is reduced, won't let me mouse over it. But like if we look at your armor, right? Physical damage resistance for you is 7 armor is 29%. 20 armor is like 50 to 60% resistance. So what I'm trying to say is that your attacks that have been hitting these creeps will do essentially half damage when you're hitting a tower. And so you have to plan that accordingly when you try to go for a last hit. Like I think the time that you went to attack this tower would have been perfectly fine if it was a creep. Right? Like this is a creep last hit if you hit it right now, but because it's a tower, it's too high. Simply because you do half damage to it. Towers are really hard to last hit. It takes time. Spirit Breaker gets a nice charge. Some fail kill stealing by you. But goodbye, Spirit Breaker. I would have kill stealed the shit out of that. But that's because I'm greedy. But this is good, right? You get a kill in the mid lane, you push. Windrunner shows up. They drop a golem on you. You end up dying. Sorry, one of my friends messaged you. So Windrunner just does a lot of damage. That's all that was. So this is kind of a bummer. It's pretty hard to survive this, honestly. Like, maybe you shouldn't have pushed. I guess that's what that death comes down to. But you had your team behind you. It's like, where was your team?
Radiant's middle tower is under attack.
Yeah, like when Spirit Breaker leaves, maybe you leave as well. It's tough to say. You see Windrunner show up there. The golem gets dropped on you from the fog, so there's not much you could have done about that, but I think you would have wanted to just BKB at this point. Because you'd rather just stay alive, right? Like, this is why you bought the BKB, is to stay alive, or to get kills. So when this golem is dropped, you just BKB and walk off this slow and you can't get shackled. So I think that's just you could have used your BKB and you didn't. And that's like the only thing that would have saved you there. I think your positioning was okay, especially given your item choices. But they used essentially 2 heroes to get you. And your team gets a nice trade for you. But you didn't have to die. You could have stayed alive, and then it would have been a really good trade. As opposed to just kind of like a mediocre to bad trade, 3 for 2. So if you rush BKB, which I don't necessarily agree with, I think it's okay. Like, it's not terrible. It's just, it's not common. It can be really good, and it's actually the old way to play Shadow Fiend. And by old way, I mean like TI1, TI2, people would just rush BKB or Blink. Those were the 2 items that you built on Shadow Fiend, Blink or BKB. And then you built the other 1 second. So it was always like Treads, BKB, Blink, or Treads, Blink, BKB. It's just not as common nowadays. But if you're going to buy it, use it. Alright, enough about that. So we'll take a look at the state of the game. You've just died, which is okay. Your net worth is probably still really good because you have quite a few last hits. I mean, 113. So you're probably like top on the net worth, which kind of makes sense. But what's going on this game is Huskar is starting to snowball on their team, and their Windrunner has a Blink. So what you're worried about this game is this Huskar getting big right now, especially because they're going to have a Warlock ulti, which is a good team fight spell, and kind of a hero that's designed to kill you in a lot of ways in this Windrunner, because she does a lot of damage to a single target. Shadow Fiend he kind of likes to build like a tower, if that makes sense. A lot of HP, a lot of damage, all on one hero. And so she kind of counters you in that sense. Tiny and Visage, they're doing okay. Then you look at your team. Your Spirit Breaker's kind of fallen off, which makes sense. He's an early game hero. Your Sniper's feeding, so you're probably not going to expect much of him. but Viper and Lifestealer are kind of doing a nice job. So you're kind of expecting this guy to lead, and Lifestealer and Viper to do a lot as well. And your score looks bad, but your farm is really good, and that kind of makes up for it. And Shadow Fiend will often at 20 minutes have this bad looking score, but a lot of farm. And so he's actually the most threatening hero in the game, even though his score looks terrible. So I think that's very true of you. I think this game's very winnable for you right now. So you see a bunch of people fighting top. You BKB. Your BKB's okay. But Windrunner just kind of jumps onto you and uses Focus Fire. So there's two ways to use BKB. The way you used it was safe, right? No spells are being used, but you just want to make sure you get your ultimate off, and so you BKB. And this is what I would call the safe BKB. The other BKB, you end up dodging an avalanche with it, so maybe it's okay in that sense. The other way to BKB is to BKB right as a spell is being used so that they waste a spell on you. It's a little greedier and a little harder to pull off. In that sometimes you don't BKB in time, and then you get stunned, and then you die without doing anything, sort of like what happened mid. And maybe after what happened mid, you're just pressing your BKB early, and that's fine. But that's definitely the greedier way to do it. Here, your Requiem's okay. I think I just would have hung back here and just hit, right-clicked, rather than using the Requiem, because Viper's pretty much dead. There's not much you're going to do to save this Viper. Granted, what you're using the Requiem for right here is you're using it more for the damage reduction than you're using it for the damage, which is good. I've seen you use it at top for the damage reduction as well. So it's good that you understand that. But here, Windrunner's on you, and you kind of don't react fast enough and end up dying from it. Now maybe that's okay, in the sense that you're getting 2 kills otherwise for it, so you've kind of committed and Windrunner's just kind of countered you. I think you played that fight okay, to be honest. I just don't think I would have committed so hard early on. I think I would have just hung back or even let my teammate die, rather than commit to a fight that I didn't necessarily know much about. This game has been a lot of fighting, and I think what you're going to expect is that it's going to be a lot of fighting for the rest of the game. And so I think you're going to want to expect that there's going to be multiple heroes there, except maybe this Warlock who's bottom farming. Who knows? You're not going to have any vision on the map, just because of the bracket you're playing in. If you want wards, you're probably going to have to buy them yourself. And you're a good enough farmer that you probably could. You could buy wards and it wouldn't affect your net worth. You'd still be the top in the game. So that's one way you could start winning, and winning is just provide vision for your team in addition to farming mid. But granted, I don't know if people would use it. Yeah, I think it's okay. So you decide to go Shadowblade next. Shadowblade's really good. Halberd, or the upgraded version especially. Silver's Edge is very good against Huskar, as well as Tiny, because Tiny has Craggy. So that's not something to underestimate this game. It's even good against Visage passive, so Gravekeeper's Cloak. So I actually really like that you're going for that item next. I think that item's really good. And in fact, I think I probably would have built that before I built the BKB. But that's really good. So here we just kind of wasted a bunch of time. So I'm going to go back, and you farm creeps at 2140, and we'll count the time that you walk around before you farm more creeps.
Radiant's bottom tower is under attack. Radiant's bottom tower has fallen.
So basically a minute. So 2140 to 2235. And on supports, that movement can be okay. But on cores, especially Shadow Fiend, who's all about efficiency and farming, you really want to minimize that kind of downtime. Because that could have been 500 extra net worth that minute, essentially. and you were kind of confused as to where to go, and you're scared because you can't really see much on the map, and they've killed you a few times. And that's what I mean by, like, it's okay to just buy wards sometimes, just to feel safe when you're farming. But being efficient in your movements is about eliminating that downtime, or that dead time where you don't do anything. You've got a pretty good understanding of tread swapping, and you're pretty good about switching them, so that's a pretty good thing. Like, mechanically, you seem really good for the bracket you're playing in, to be honest. And so I think for you, it's going to be a lot on decision making and like what decisions to make, and about being efficient and not wasting time. And I think that's going to be your big focus to get your MMR up and improve as a player. The other thing I'd like to see from you is just being a little bit more aggressive, as well as trying to be a little bit more involved early. So that's like 3 big things. And like your item build is built to go fight. Like BKB is built to go fight. Same thing with Shadowblade. But you're just not doing too much of it. Their team fight's just scary. Warlock's really scary. When his golem's up, which it's like never up. It's like a really long cooldown. So a lot of this game is going to be playing around this cooldown. Or like trying to kill him off before the fight starts, and that's a little tricky. Okay, so big thing, you just finished your Shadowblade, which means you want to go look for a kill with it. And the way you're playing, to me, I just get this feeling that you're super scared of dying. And I want to see you feel more aggressive on the map, right? There's no reason for you to be super scared back here. And maybe you're even looking for a kill, but it's unreasonable, right? Like if we look at the mini-map, like there's 2 heroes showing down here. They just team fight with Warlock ulti, so you know Warlock's down there. You didn't necessarily look, but Tiny is down there as well. And maybe he showed during that fight kind of thing. Like he even showed bottom there. So like you're 100% fine here, especially because Windrunner's dead. Right? Where are the heroes on the map, and then your play is influenced by where those heroes are on the map. Right? No one's going to come farm here. No one's going to come gank you here. In fact, you could probably push this next wave out, and no one will show up in time. Like, maybe Windrunner shows up if she TP's top instantly and runs top. But this wave right here, I would have farmed that. Because I know there's like no chance. There's a very low probability that someone yanks me there. And then I would have gone back to the jungle. Again, prioritize creeps that aren't in the jungle. Here you get a really nice ulti. Again, a safe BKB, which is fine. You actually didn't need to BKB at all. So when you buy a BKB, you got to think about what spells you're actually buying it to dodge. And if we look at their lineups, what spells are you looking to dodge with BKB? The answer is you can't dodge Rock because it's an ultimate. It goes through BKB. So Huskar ult, damage. Like the jump still affects you and the slow still affects you. So the damage from Life Break is one. I guess the damage from Chaotic Offering is another. Shackle Shot's the big one. Tiny Avalanche and Toss is another big one, and then the Soul Assumption from Visage, as well as his bird drops. So, like, those are the things you're looking to stun. And when you assess this fight, you want to assess who's here, right? Who are the heroes in the fight? Well, there's Tiny, Huskar, Shadow Demon, right? Windrunner's not there because she's showing mid. And Visage, I guess, is there as well. Yeah, Visage is there. So, if you're looking to use your spells, you want to keep track of what spells go on cooldown and whether or not you need to use BKB. Right? We see Tiny use Avalanche and Toss. And then we see Huskar use his ulti. And Warlock has used his ulti. He used it down bottom. So all 3 of these heroes, the spells that you're worried about, are on cooldown, which means you don't need to use BKB. Granted, maybe you use BKB for this Visage that's like standing behind you, and maybe these birds would drop on you. So maybe that's okay. But since you're coming out of Invis, that's probably unlikely. This is a really good fight. Like, you're a little off on your positioning with Requiem, like trying to Requiem on top of the Warlock. And that can be a bit tricky with a Shadow Blade, because you're kind of worried about clicking them rather than Requieming. But the way you do that is you kind of walk to the right of him. You just click past him. You end up walking through him. And this would have been a one-shot. Maybe it mattered or not. Probably didn't matter. It was a really good Requiem by you. I'm talking about a lot about how to use your BKB well. And they're small things. They're really, really small things, and they require an immense amount of awareness and attention to the game. But they make a big difference. And then here you end up finishing your Aquila after you've at 26 minutes. Okay. Aquila is an early game item. Don't buy Aquila at 26 minutes. Right? You don't want to waste your slot on an Aquila at 26 minutes. Right? This is the point where I'd say sell your Wraith Band and carry an Ogre Club instead. Right? The point of Aquila is that it's a bunch of early stats and regen, not that it's a good late game item. Right? I don't know if you watch a lot of pro games, but it's never like, oh my goodness, Ember has completed his Aquila. We can't win the game anymore. So you're looking to complete your Silver's Edge, which is good. I like that. I think it's a good item. Because there's 3 heroes that counters this game. The other options, like if you're more worried about Windrunner than other options, you could have built like an MKB. But then you're pretty squishy because you only have BKB for HP. You could also build movement speed, like Sanjin Yasha would have been good. Scotty's kind of okay, makes you a little tankier, which is really good with BKB, because then they're forced to do physical damage to kill you, but they have a lot of physical damage, so that's okay. You have a lot of options this game in terms of items.
Dire's top tower is under attack.
You get a nice kill. This is really nice by you. This BKB is paying off. You probably could have killed the Windrunner there too, but she's really fast and you would have had to anticipate really well. So I think you played that fight okay. So the way the fight starts, you think he's jumping you, which is kind of a reasonable thing, because you and Sniper are pretty much in the same position. So that's reasonable. Then you figure out it's Sniper, and he's realized he's jumped too far. So you just kind of like turn and fight him, and that's really good. And so at this point, Windrunner commits. Right? And I think I would have just backed if I were the Radiant, but because Windrunner commits, her whole team kind of has to commit. And it ends up costing her kills, so it's like a mistake by the Windrunner that gets her team killed. And you just kind of reacted to that and just BKB'd Requiemed and won the fight, essentially. Like, that's why BKB is so strong on SF. It guarantees that you're going to get your Requiem of Souls off. Pretty much. Unless they have a BKB interrupt, which they have one, which is Chaotic Offering. And you BKB'd after the Chaotic Offering. So there's like nothing to interrupt you. You're just going to get your ultimate off. And it's very hard to fight into it. Mostly because of the damage reduction. The damage is nice, but the damage reduction is actually probably the most powerful part of that spell. The damage with Shadow Blade is scary for split farmers or split pushers. Here, I'd like to see you buy 2 TPs so that you're carrying TPs around. Nice of you to bottle your Viper. Good understanding of the bottle mechanics. And you want to take Roche. Which is good. You probably could have taken Roche, actually, without even going back to base. Probably. It's okay, like, minor and efficient thing. Usually when you win a big team fight, you want to take an objective. And you probably could have taken Roche before going back to base, because no one was alive to fight you. But this is good. Like, part of the reason Shadow Fiends will go early lifesteal is because Shadow Fiend's actually really good at killing Roche early on, mostly because of the way Presence of the Dark Lord works. Like, minus armor is huge for killing Roche. And that's mostly the reason behind going Helm first. Like, is to farm Ancients as well as to take the Aegis at, like, minute 12. And it's just an extra tower worth of gold for your team. which is huge. Who ended up taking the Aegis? Why wasn't it you? Sniper. Okay, why did you give Sniper the Aegis? Like, you have like 3k or 4k more net worth than he does. So when you're deciding who to give the Aegis to, you want to give it to the strongest hero on your team most of the time, unless you're pushing high ground, in which case you want to give the Aegis to the hero that is responsible for doing the tower damage, right? Because, like in this example, you should 100% get the Aegis. You have 6k more net worth than the Sniper. And that's just kind of understanding the state of the game, understanding how well your team is doing, right? Just because Sniper went safe lane does not mean that he deserves the Aegis. This is 100% you should get the Aegis. And there are games where, like, I have a shitty safe lane, and I give the Aegis to my off laner, who just, like, owned and is like a 12-1 bottom, and she's more important than I am, and that's fine. That's Dota. That's what happens. But I think, like, Sniper's going to get it, and he's just going to die. And on you, this could be a huge problem for them to deal with. I just assumed you would take it. Alright, so you get a Requiem off on here. And she kind of gets away. BKB doesn't do much versus Focus Fire. Alright. So let's talk about this. This is an okay idea, in that you want to get solo picks with Requiem, right? You can't get solo picks with Requiem with 18 souls. You just can't do it. Right? It's just a bad plan. You had just died, right? You'd TP'd to the tier 2 and then you went and took Roche. So you actually haven't had any time to farm souls, except for maybe that one camp. So your Requiem is going to do half damage. And like, you set up an okay Requiem on her. Like, if you had let this first one go, that actually would have been perfect, because she kind of like walks back in. But you don't necessarily know that she's going to turn around. She looks like she's retreating. And like, your Requiem positioning's okay. You want to get a little bit better about landing it on the targets. And the best way to get better at that is to anticipate what is she thinking, where is she going to be in 3 seconds. So here, you set up a Requiem, right? Where is she going? She's likely retreating. So she's likely going to be here in 2 seconds. So I'd stop casting this and just go back. Then she comes back. What is she going to do for the next 2 seconds? Well, she's likely to try and last hit these 2 creeps, which means she's going to be standing right here, which is the max attacks range for Windrunner. So you walk to right here, and then you start to Requiem, right? Like, think logically about what the hero is going to do, and then walk to positions that make sense, right? Anticipate where they will be, rather than going to where they are. But this is just kind of like a... Shadow Fiend should be able to do this, but doesn't necessarily. She's actually pretty tanky because she built an Ags. So you're not even going to one-shot her if you have full damage from your ulti. It'll do like 1,500 damage, I think. Let's see. Level 16 Shadow Fiend. Ulti full damage.
Radiant's top tower is under attack.
So if you land the full ultimate at level 3, it does 1,800 damage.
Radiant's top tower is under attack.
So you wouldn't have been able to one-shot her. Would have been close.
Radiant's top tower.
And here your team just kind of like loses a fight because you were up front. Sniper uses both of his Aegises and they don't really matter. If you had Aegis there, maybe that was a good fight. But you didn't.
Dire's structures are fortified.
So now when you're itemizing, right, you got to be thinking about what's killing me,
Radiant's top
right?
tower is
Should I itemize against what's killing me? And what's killing you this game is a Windrunner. Pretty much only Windrunner. So you want to build an item that makes it harder for her to kill you. Now, Windrunner kind of counters you, so it's a little difficult for you to think of an item that does that. But the best item against Windrunner is probably Butterfly,
Dire's middle tower is under attack.
because of the evasion. Now, if she builds MKB, it's completely useless.
Dire's middle
But that means that Butterfly is still the best item to build for you. So at this point, maybe you try to build Butterfly next. Or you can just say, like, I hope that I BKB her Shackle, And if she starts hitting me, then I can just back out. You can also build something weird, like an E-Blade, or even a Ghost Scepter. That's really weird. Yules would be good for getting out of it, but it's too late to build a Yules. I don't know. You end up electing for Skadi. Skadi's nice because it gives you a little bit of damage, a little bit of tankability. So I think that's an okay build. But this is like pretty much what you want to do every single time you die on Shadow Fiend. You just tell your team, just don't fight for a minute. Let me do one round through the jungle and get my souls up. You actually blocked this camp. That was just like a misunderstanding on your part. If you don't know the neutral camp spawn boxes, one thing that's a fantastic thing for learning them is the neutral camp spawn boxes custom game. It just shows you all the boxes, all the tower ranges, all the vision ranges. It's really helpful for learning how to stack and learning exactly where those lines are. Because this box is kind of like this. That's pretty much this box. It's a little further left than that. So, state of the game, right? What's happening? Huskar's been slowing down a lot, but it's a pretty even game. They're starting to get a lot more kills, and their team fight's probably a little bit better than yours, mostly just because they have a Warlock and you don't have any AoE team fight disable. So you probably don't want to team fight them, and you probably want to split push. Like, that's going to be your win condition. Split push, get big, and then win fights that way because you have more items. So what you want to see is you want to see like 1 or 2 heroes top, 1 or 2 heroes bottom, 1 mid, and then you kind of push. It's a little tricky because Windrunner can pick off people with her blink. So maybe that's not the best either. Like, what's the game plan? Game plan is tough to execute at this point, or tough to think of a good one. Because they have nice counters to split pushing, and they're better in team fights than you guys. So Huskar jumps in. You ulti and try to run. Spearbreaker goes in and kind of dies for you. Oh nice, you killed Windrunner. So this is a fight you just don't want to take. A lot of this bracket is about taking fights that you want to take. BKB animation isn't there forever. It'll probably come off when you use it. Right? You see 4 heroes here at this point. Right? Instead of trying to fight with your BKB Requiem, which is like okay, just run. Right? You have Viper here, and you've got a sniper who's already running. Like, he made the right choice. Spiritbreaker's coming, but he's really far away, and your Lifestealer's just not even going to be there. So you're outgunned. Like, just give away a kill, and then run. Because you kind of committed yourself to your own death. Now, Spiritbreaker comes in and tries to save you, or maybe he's just trying to kill that Tiny. And you end up picking off the Windrunner. But essentially what happened is instead of it being a 1-for-0 trade, it ends up being a 3-for-2 trade. And if you're behind, maybe that's okay to trade 2v2. But they're going to push down your mid barracks now because of that. And maybe you have to buy back because of it.
Dire's middle tower is under attack.
In the late game, most of the time, you just kind of want to give away that one hero because you can defend as 4. But you definitely can't defend as 2. Although he's not even shrapneling.
Dire's middle tower is under attack. Dire's middle tower has fallen.
So you buy back. They retreat. You probably didn't even need to buy back at that point, although it did scare the Huskar off. So maybe your buyback did need to be used. You end up getting a kill. It's a good BKB. So the reason your BKB is good there is that it's basically already at 5 seconds. So like using it's not going to make it any worse. And Huskar is mostly magic damage because of the way Burning Spears works.
Radiant's bottom tower is under attack.
So completely fine to just like you need a BKB, just use it. Like at this point you're not saving it for anything in particular. You're just using it whenever it benefits you. And if you can reduce Huskar's damage, use it. It's legit. If you're gonna dodge a shackle shot, use it. Like, don't be shy about using your BKB at this stage of the game. When it's a 10-second one, you kind of want to pick and choose. But when it's a 5-second one, you use it whenever you can. So a lot of what this game has devolved into is that you're trying to find pickoffs with your Shadow Blade. And, you know, that's not really a 35-minute kind of thing on Shadow Fiend. Because, like I said, your ulti damage isn't actually going to one-shot anyone at this stage of the game, unless you get a perfect one on like a support. Like even this guy has 1800 HP. And it's really hard to get a perfect ulti. So most of the like top damage ones do like 1200 damage. So you're not one-shotting anybody anymore. Like Visage, he has less HP, but he's actually got Gravekeeper's Close, so he's too tanky. Windrunner's too tanky. Huskar's too tanky. So you don't want to be using this Shadow Blade so much now to get those solo pickoffs unless someone's like in the top lane or something, or you have somebody else coming. You're not going to be able to do it by yourself at this point. That's what I'm trying to say. Like this Shadow Blade usage, fine. If you think there's a ward on the top river, which there may be, then using it to get a rune without being seen, that's a fine use of Shadow Blade. But using it to try to get solo picks, probably not the best. So Windrunner shows bottom, Warlock shows mid. Like the next objective for you guys is probably just to push out lanes. Like split push as well as you can without Windrunner killing you. Which means you probably are the one who needs to be split pushing. And then try to take Roche, and then maybe end the game off of that. That would be kind of the goal. Other goals would be to just get items up, or not items. Yeah, I guess the other thing you're waiting for is like a power curve of items, for example. Like you'll see this a lot with pro games, where they look at their team and they say, is anyone close to finishing like a big item that really influences the way the game is played? And so an item like that would be like a BKB or an AC or, you know, just the next big item, a Scotty for you or a Sanj and Yasha for you. You know, your Halberd on your support, your Blade Mail on your Spirit Breaker, whatever. You just ask that kind of question as like a general question. And then what you do is you decide as a team, okay, we'll just play passive for about 2 or 3 minutes until Slardar gets his blink or Shadow Fiend gets his BKB, and then we'll fight them. And so then you're getting a team kind of on the same page of what's going on. So here you like thinking about going in and you're not. Like there's a lot of dancing around the mid lane. And what you want to be as a Shadow Fiend is you're not a dancer. In terms of like dancing in and out of fights like that. You're a farmer. You want to be farming the bottom lane, pushing the bottom lane, you know, pushing the top lane. This dancing around looking for a solo kill against a team that's grouped up as 5, it's just not going to happen, right? Because even if you solo kill that Tiny with a Requiem or solo kill the Windrunner, like this guy's out of position. He's dead. But even if you solo kill the Windrunner, for example, you're going to get a Golem dropped on your head. And then you're going to have a Tiny stun you, and then you're just dead. So you're just trading your life, best case scenario, 1 for 1. If your team's behind you, it's a little different. Like here, if you're able to get a Requiem, then it's okay because there's a Spirit Breaker there. So like this is good. But again, like, is you roaming around with your Shadow Blade like this really worth it? Like, you probably did that for 3.5 minutes, and then you found a good kill, which is good. But you could have had more gold in that time. And again, I think it's just, it depends on what hero you're playing. Here, I think you just back out unreasonably. Like Golem he drops his ulti, which is like kind of scary. But if we're thinking about the map, right? 2 of their heroes are dead. Huskar is dead, Windrunner is dead. Like, what are the biggest threats to kill you? Windrunner and Huskar, basically, because they do physical damage. A lot of physical damage that you can't BKB through. Your BKB is up, Golem is down. I think you just walk up and you right-click that guy. Like, I don't think there's anything for you to be afraid of. Like, Lifestealer's got the idea. But you could have just killed him and then hit that tower. And I don't know what you're thinking at this point. You're thinking maybe go farm or go get more pickoffs, right? Like, you've already gotten your pickoff. Alright, you find this guy. Like, this could be a dead tier 2 instead of running. And I don't know what you saw or what you were looking for. Maybe you were looking for those guys. And, like, Tiny hits reasonably hard too now. So you're kind of worried about Tiny's right clicks. But, like, at this point of the game, the most important thing are objectives. And that was a free tier 2. And I think you missed out on that. It's just a decision-making thing. Like, if we're looking at the state of the game, again, like, kills are starting to matter less. Everyone's starting to get farm. You're probably still the most farmed hero in the game. Windrunner's probably catching up because she's gotten kills. Tiny's starting to look like he's got a lot of items. You don't actually check items very often. I get informed by them, by like little pop-ups that come up on the right when I watch the replay. But one thing I want you to work on is just clicking heroes, seeing what items they have. Like AC Ags Tiny, like, okay, he doesn't have a blink, he can't jump me. Right? Like, it changes the way you play against the hero. Like, if he had a Dagon 5 E-Blade, you might play a little differently against the Tiny than you would if he has Ags AC. Now, most games you expect him to build, like Ags AC, like Lifesteal, those kinds of items. But this is nice. You catch 2 heroes in your jungle, which is good. But knowing what items the other team has can inform your decisions a lot better. Here, using the Shadow Blade for the movement speed, that's completely fine. Huskar's there too. Alright, that's good. You use your break hit on Huskar. And your team's winning this fight, which is good. This is like a minor thing. But when you're chasing someone around in the woods like this, not here. So here, when you're chasing someone in the woods like this, you can actually attack move the ground, and when a hero comes into vision, your hero will automatically attack. So if you attack move the ground here, your hero would have automatically attacked that guy, and you would have attacked him twice essentially before this auto attack hits. It's like a really small thing, but it can be the difference between you getting a kill or not, or winning a team fight or not, or switching to an earlier target. Like, take advantage of the mechanics in Dota, and that's like a very simple one, which is simply attacking the ground. You have to be careful with that. Like, you can't attack the ground. When you attack the ground, you will always attack the nearest unit. So if there's like a Windrunner here, and you're standing here, and you attack the ground, you'll attack this. Right, so you can't really do it around creep waves, but like this was a perfect example of when it could have happened. And it would have saved you. It would have gotten you the kill on Warlock faster. Now that didn't change the outcome of the fight at all. But it may have, or it may change the outcome of the fight in the future. So they're all dead. You guys try to push. This is like a tricky thing that I think a lot of players struggle with. Is like, what do you do when you win a big team fight? Right? Like, you've won this big team fight. What you need to do is assess the map. Say, where are the creep waves? Right? Because pushing top is not an option right now, simply because of where the creep wave is. Just like pushing mid is not an option right now because of where the creep wave is. Unless you want to try to fight through backdoor regen, and you're probably not strong enough to do that. So the option right now is to run straight bottom and push this tier 2. And then maybe do some damage on this tier 3. Like, that's the objective you can take, or you can take Roche. And I think at this point, Roche is probably the easier objective for you to take. And I would much rather see you guys run for Roche right now and take it, because they can't contest you, rather than trying to push mid, because it's just not possible. You're not going to get there in time. Maybe you'll kill this tier 2, actually. So maybe that's a thing. Because Windrunner is dead for quite some time. But they aren't going to give it away for free, especially if they have a glyph. And if you get no objective, like you took the bottom tier tower mostly just because of, or tier 2 tower mostly just because your creep wave is pushing, but you basically wasted the 60 seconds that they were dead and didn't accomplish anything with it, and that's just bad late game decision making. Like an Aegis on you would be really good right now, and your team kind of like clues into it and starts trying to do the Aegis now, but like now it's a fight if they know, whereas it was free a minute ago. Still ends up being okay. We'll see who you give your Aegis to this time. If we're looking at net worth, you're still up there. Maybe Lifestealer's who you give it to now. Just kind of depends who you feel is the most important on your team. Your Lifestealer's got some good farm. You probably don't want to give it to Sniper. He doesn't do much. Viper, probably not. Yeah, I think it's still you. Probably still you. Especially because like Shadow Fiend's really good at sieging towers. So this is just crazy. You're here by yourself. You have an Aegis. That's not a an Aegis isn't a license to go crazy. In the sense that you just kind of feed away your first life for nothing. And then your team shows up for your second life. And they get a couple of counter kills. But like if your first death had killed 3 heroes with your teammates around, that would have won the fight. So it's just bad positioning by you. It ends up being a team wipe. So it ends up being okay, but your positioning at the start of that fight was just not good. All of your teammates were 2 or 3 screens away, probably 10 or 15 seconds out. And like if you're alive at the end of that fight, at the end of a 5-man wipe, you could just push mid, take a tower, take racks, you know, run bottom, right? Run bottom, finish off their tier 3s. Like, it sounds stupid, but when I'm talking about like those little pushes in the first 10 minutes of the game, so pushing down this tower the first 10 minutes, right? And then you do like little things to chip away at this tower in the mid 20, 30 minutes kind of thing. If you win a team fight at this stage and the tier 2s are up, you don't get racks. So those little decisions in the 8 to 10 minute mark of pushing their tower doing 300 damage, pushing their mid tier 2 doing 300 damage, like the more times you can do that, the better, because when you win a fight in this situation, you can push their racks down. Rather than you win a big team fight, which should win you the game at this stage of the game because none of them have buyback, and you do nothing with it. So, like, those early game decisions have big late game influences that people don't think about very often. Lifesteal is probably good. Scotty's pretty good too. Your farm's okay. Like, you have a lot of creep kills, you have a pretty good amount of creep kills. Probably the most out of anyone. Big fights happening without you. Big bummer for you. Team wins the fight without you, though, which is really nice. Most of the time, if you're like the most important hero on your team, and I think in this game you probably are, maybe Lifestealer is more important than you are right now, but you're up there. You just want to be telling your team not to fight without you. Sometimes they'll listen, sometimes they won't. Most of the time they listen, though. So just something to think about. So now they've all died. Lifestealer went ham, killed all of them for you. And that's like a game-winning push for you guys if they don't have buybacks. So this is a situation where when all of their heroes are dead like this, you look at their timers and you say, can we kill 2 tier 4s and the throne before any of them respawn? Because you only need to kill one of these towers to kill the tier 4s. And at this point, you probably don't have enough time. It's kind of like a feel thing. Like, you didn't itemize a lot of damage, and when you don't have a Deso or any of those kinds of things. So it's probably not, so you probably take the racks. But it's just something to think about. Like, when you have the opportunity to end the game, end it. Don't dick around. Like, fountain camping is really fun, but I have lost so many games because I decided to fountain camp rather than ending the game. Here, like, you've just pushed down this mid tower, mid racks, and you have a little bit more time. So what you do is you look at the towers and you say which tower has more health, right? This one's got 1408. This one's got 1279. So this is the tower to go for. And like, that's something you could be doing when you're just clicking these racks. Because none of them are alive, so you don't really have to pay attention to what your hero's doing. You can just right-click the racks and then look elsewhere. Look to where you're going next. And then make a good decision based off of that. Here you're attacking from the low ground, so you're missing 25% of the time. So I'd like to see you standing here. It also gives you vision. I mean, your creeps are giving you vision too. But your camera positioning, not ideal either. Like, this tower probably would have been dead 25% faster if you'd just been standing on a hill. And you're kind of worried about them going on you because they're starting to respawn, and so there's not very many heroes. So maybe it's okay to take those misses because your positioning's a little bit better. Just kind of depends. So here you buy your recipe for your Satanic, which I don't necessarily agree with. So the way gold works is there's two kinds of gold, reliable and unreliable. And in the late game, that's really important for influencing your buyback. Because, like in this example, buyback's 1800 and you have 1854 reliable gold, which means that as long as you keep 1850 reliable gold, you will always be able to buy back, because you don't lose reliable gold on death. But because of the way you've done this, right, your death cost is 750 and your buyback cost is still 1750. So because you've bought this recipe, now instead of needing to farm 300 gold to put you at 1800 essentially to be able to buy back, you actually need to farm your death cost in addition to the 300 gold. So you actually need to farm 1150 gold before you're able to buy back. And this is like a small thing that could influence the end of your game, but it's something you just want to be thinking about. Is you mouse over your gold, you say how much of my gold is reliable, how much is unreliable, do I have more reliable than my buyback cost? Then my goal is to try to keep my gold above that at all times. Like, because this recipe is not making your hero stronger at all, it's just impeding your buyback. So it's just a bad recipe purchase. I'm fine with Satanic. I think Satanic's a fine next item. But like small late game decision making things. It may or may not matter this game, but it is a mistake. Granted, if you don't think you can win a fight without buying an item, buy it. Right? Don't save buyback if your hero's relying on doing all the damage during that initial BKB. Like, just make your hero as strong as you can. Like, buyback isn't like a thing that you mandatorily need to have. But it is something that you shouldn't give away for free either. Man, that Windrunner. Good juke. That is a really good TP. That's a TP that takes advantage of the fact that they can't see around those trees. It's just really good. Like, let's watch that from the Windrunner's perspective. Right, like it's daytime. You just walk behind the trees. Boom, you're gone. I don't think Spirit Breaker needed to go in there. But that's really good. That's why when you see like pros run away, they'll often run up a hill and then just TP instantly up the top of the hill, because people lose vision when they're down here, just like in the mid lane that I was talking about earlier this game. So like that's one way you can escape, run up to the top of the hill, TP. The other way is like to do what you just did, juke behind trees, TP. It's all really good. And so like now you've finally farmed your buyback gold, and you're 1100 gold ahead. Now you've got more reliable gold though because of that fight. You got reliable gold from that fight. The sources of reliable gold are hero kills, hero AoE gold, tower gold, and then like Rax gold. And I think that's it. Roshan also counts as reliable gold. And then everything you get from creeps, like ancients, lane creeps, jungle creeps, that's all unreliable. And here, for example, like I'm fine with you finishing your Satanic. If you feel like you need a Satanic to win the fight, and maybe you do. Like if Windrunner focuses you, you need to heal up. So maybe you do, maybe you don't. You have to evaluate, like, is the item more important than the buyback? And I think this game, the buyback's more important. But some of that's just preference. So you're waiting for the Aegis. Like, one thing you could have done, if you're waiting for the Aegis, right? If that's your win condition, for example, you actually could have kept your Satanic as a helm, dominated a creep, and then put a creep in here. Because then you could be farming, right? You could be doing this camp, you could be farming your own jungle, you could be farming this jungle, whatever. You can do whatever you want, and then your creep will give away the Roshan at some point. When you upgrade your Satanic, you actually lose the ability to dominate a creep, and the creep that you've dominated goes away. So maybe that's a reason to, like, an additional reason to just save buyback as opposed to finishing the Satanic. Small thing. Again, like, the late game is trying to make as few mistakes as possible, because one mistake can end the game. Like, that's what the late game in Dota is. And a lot of, you know, like Na'Vi at TI1, they were famous for trying to end the games in 15 minutes, 20 minutes. Like, that was their goal every game. Let's end the game at 15 minutes. And the reason they thought that was because in the late game, mistakes are so punishing that they wanted to play every single game in the early game where they could make mistakes and still, like, it wouldn't lose them the game. As opposed to, like, if you die right now and you die for free, your team might just lose. And so their philosophy was to try to end games before games reached that point because they thought they were the better team. So here you realize you have a gem. This isn't the best decision. So if you had an MKB, this is a fine decision. BKBing is probably good because she could still shackle you, so I'm okay with the BKB. But just keep running, right? Like, she's turned on Windrun, so maybe you, like, turn an attack to bait the Windrun and then you just run, right? You can't fight a Windrunner who has evasion at this stage of the game. She does so much damage to you. Just run. Like, maybe you're ulting for the damage reduction, but, like, your team is dying. Like, this Windrunner is trying to kill you every fight because she's really strong against you. Like, she is your counter. Like, that's her job this game. Her job is to kill you or Lifestealer. Like, if she kills either one of those targets, then she's done her job. Whereas the others handle the other one, which kind of happened in that fight. Lifestealer came out a little bit late. But that's just bad decision making by you. Like, you can't kill a Windrunner with the item build that you've gone. If you want to be able to kill a Windrunner, build an MKB. But even then, you probably don't want to man fight a Windrunner who's used Focus Fire on you, because she hits 5 times a second and you hit like 2. Let's see, what's your attack speed? You hit a little less than twice a second, and she's hitting you 5 times a second for full damage. Like, she doesn't hit as hard as you, so you gotta factor that in. She's dead, so I can't look at her stats. And so, like, in this game, having the helm and the buyback might have been better. Granted, your whole team was dead and nobody had buyback. And, like, another way you can lose a game is you buy back by yourself and then die by yourself before your team's ready to go. But, like, here, for example, I would have bought back now, and then maybe you have a fight to defend it. Like, overall, it's a pretty good game. Like, I think you've shown that you're a pretty good farmer and you have a pretty good understanding of last hitting. That's pretty much far beyond your peers. But I think for you, the biggest thing to work on is going to be efficiency, so not wasting time, and planning. Like, planning is a big, big thing. Like, what I feel like happens in these games, and when I'm watching you, is you just kind of, like, walk from place to place, and there's no anticipation. There's just a, oh, this is happening, like right now, I'm going to click to where they are, and I'm going to run to that spot, and they'll probably be there in whatever amount of time it takes me to get there, right? Think about like that. I'm picturing that gank of the Windrunner top especially, right? Think about where they're going to be when they get there, right? Anticipation, move that direction. Because I think like you had a really good game. You did a lot of damage. You probably did the most hero damage on your team, and you've got the most kills. But like you're losing a lot of these games, and you're dying a lot because you're not anticipating what could happen, and you're missing out on a lot of kills too. Mechanically, there's a couple of things for you to work on, like attacking and then raising. But biggest thing is anticipate, anticipate, anticipate. And as you get better and better at this game, you're going to start anticipating like, I don't know, 3 or 4 minutes in advance. Sometimes even like 20. You know, it really just kind of depends. If you're a drafter for a team like PPD, like he predicts basically the whole 30 minutes of the game with his hero picks. And if he's really good at it, he's a good drafter. And if he's really bad at it, he's a bad drafter. But I think that's the biggest point for you. I hope there were a lot of little things that help you out too. Overall, like you have a long way to go in terms of improving. But you're a pretty good Dota player, especially with your last inning and your understanding. Shadow Fiend's not an easy hero to start with, so I'm kind of happy you started with him. He's not the run-of-the-mill hero that you see in this bracket a lot, like the Lifestealers and the Snipers and the Vipers. So I'm really happy to see you playing Shadow Fiend, and I wish you the best. That's it for this replay review. If you're looking to get a replay reviewed by me, submit it to the thread that I have linked at the bottom. If you want to check out the Dota buff for this game, that's also linked. And replays I'm looking for are typically replays where you lost and you feel like you played pretty well, like the game was kind of stacked against you, because I feel like those have the biggest learning opportunities. But that's it, so thanks for watching.